The gunshot that shattered the morning silence wasn't what made Olivia Morrison's hands shake as she crouched behind the water trough. It was the realization that she had just killed a man to protect a secret she could never take back. Owen Fletcher had been watering his horse when the shooting started, and now he stood between her and three more riders thundering down Murphy's Main Street, his Colt already drawn and firing with a steady hand that seemed impossible for someone who had never met her before that moment. The year was 1873, and Murphy's, California, had settled into a quieter existence than its gold rush days. But trouble still found its way into the Sierra Nevada foothills like water finding cracks in stone. Olivia pressed herself against the rough wooden planks of the livery stable, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might burst through her rib cage. The man she had shot lay motionless in the dust 15 feet away, his blood darkening the dry earth. She had never killed anyone before. She had never even fired a gun before today. Owen's shots drove the remaining riders back around the corner of the general store. He moved with practiced efficiency, reloading as he backed toward her position. "Can you ride?" he called out, not taking his eyes off the street. Olivia nodded, then realized he couldn't see her. "Yes," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Then we need to go. Now." He grabbed the reins of his bay mare with one hand, keeping his gun ready with the other. "Those men work for Clayton Hayes. They won't stop." The name sent ice through her veins. Clayton Hayes. Of course they worked for him. That's why they had found her, why they had cornered her outside the boarding house where she had been staying for the past 3 days, thinking she was safe, thinking she had finally escaped. Owen hauled himself into the saddle and extended his hand down to her. Olivia hesitated for only a heartbeat before taking it. His grip was strong and calloused, and he pulled her up behind him with surprising ease. She barely had time to wrap her arms around his waist before he spurred the mare into motion. They thundered out of town, heading east, into the rolling hills covered with digger pines and manzanita. Gunshots cracked behind them but fell short. Owen guided his horse off the main road onto a narrow trail that wound up into rougher country. Olivia clung to him, feeling the solid warmth of his back against her cheek, smelling leather and sweat and gunpowder. She didn't know this man. She had no reason to trust him. But he had stepped between her and certain death without hesitation, and now he was risking his life to get her away from Hayes' men. They rode hard for over an hour, the horses breathing growing labored as they climbed higher into the hills. Finally, Owen slowed and guided them into a hidden canyon where a small creek trickled between granite boulders. He dismounted and helped Olivia down, steadying her when her legs nearly buckled. "We should be safe here for a bit," he said, leading the mare to the water. "They'll have a harder time tracking us over the rock." Olivia sank down onto a flat boulder, her whole body beginning to tremble now that the immediate danger had passed. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She stared at them like they belonged to someone else, someone capable of pulling a trigger and ending a life. Owen let his horse drink, then tied her to a low branch where she could graze on the sparse grass growing between the rocks. He pulled a canteen from his saddle and brought it to Olivia. "Drink," he said gently. She took it with shaking hands and managed a few swallows. The water was warm but tasted better than anything she could remember. When she tried to hand it back, she fumbled and nearly dropped it. Owen caught it smoothly and set it down on the rock beside her. "First time?" he asked, settling onto a boulder across from her. Olivia knew what he meant. "Yes," her voice cracked. I didn't mean to." "You saved your own life," Owen said. "That man would have killed you if you hadn't fired first. You don't know that. I know Clayton Hayes." Owen's voice went hard. "And I know the men who work for him. They don't leave witnesses." Olivia wrapped her arms around herself, though the afternoon sun was warm. How do you know about Hayes? Everyone in these parts knows about Clayton Hayes. He owns half the businesses between here and Sacramento, and the other half pay him protection money. Owen studied her with sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. Question is, what does a woman like you have to do with a man like that? The trembling got worse. Olivia felt it spreading through her chest, into her throat, making it hard to breathe. She had run for 3 months, covering her tracks, changing her name, dyeing her hair from blonde to brown. She had thought California would be far enough. She had been wrong. Owen watched her for a long moment, then stood and checked the trail they had come up. When he returned, his expression had softened. "You don't have to tell me," he said. "But if Hayes is after you, you're going to need help, and I'm offering." "Why?" Olivia looked up at him, searching his face. He was probably 25 or 26, with sun-weathered skin and dark hair that needed cutting. Not handsome in a refined way, but there was something solid about him, something that made her want to trust him despite knowing better. "You don't even know me." "Don't need to know you to know Hayes is bad news." Owen crouched down so he was at her eye level. "I've got my own reasons for not liking that man, and I saw what happened back there. You were defending yourself." Tears burned Olivia's eyes and she blinked them back furiously. She couldn't afford to cry. She had cried enough over the past 3 months to last a lifetime. "They're going to keep coming," she whispered. "Hayes will send more men, probably." Owen didn't sugarcoat it. "So we need to figure out where you can go that's safer than Murphy's." "There's nowhere safe." The words came out flat, hopeless. "He'll find me anywhere." "Then maybe running isn't the answer." Olivia let out a harsh laugh that had no humor in it. "What else is there? I can't fight Clayton Hayes. He has money, men, connections. I have nothing." Owen was quiet for a moment, his gaze steady on her face. "You have the truth, don't you? That's why he's after you." The trembling intensified. Olivia felt like she was going to shake apart at the seams. 3 months of running, of looking over her shoulder, of waking up in cold sweats from nightmares where Hayes' men found her. 3 months of carrying this secret like a stone in her chest, getting heavier every day. "I can't tell you," she said. "It would put you in danger." "I'm already in danger. I just shot at Hayes' men. He's not going to forget that." Owen's voice was matter of fact. "So you might as well tell me what this is about." Olivia looked at him, really looked at him. He had kind eyes despite the hard edge life had clearly given him. He sat there calmly, like they had all the time in the world, like he would wait forever if that's what she needed. Something in her chest cracked open just a little. "I worked for him," she said quietly. "In Sacramento. I was a bookkeeper for one of his businesses, a freight company. It was a good job, good pay. I needed the money. My father had died the year before, left debts. My mother was sick. I was 21 and desperate." Owen nodded but didn't interrupt. "I was good at my job, very good," Hayes noticed. "After 6 months, he moved me to his main office, had me keeping books for multiple businesses. That's when I started seeing the discrepancies." Olivia's hands clenched into fists. Money going places it shouldn't, payments to people that didn't exist. "I thought maybe I was making mistakes, so I went back through everything carefully." "And you found something he didn't want you to find," Owen said. "I found evidence of murder." The words fell like stones between them. Hayes had paid someone to kill a rival businessman and his wife. It was all there in the books, coded but not well enough. The payment matched the date of their deaths exactly, and there were others. 3 more people over the past 2 years, all competitors, all dead in what looked like accidents or robberies. Owen's expression darkened. "Did you go to the law?" "The sheriff in Sacramento is on Hayes' payroll. I saw those payments too." Olivia's voice shook. "I didn't know what to do. I kept working, pretended I hadn't noticed anything. But Hayes, he's smart. He saw something in me, some change. He called me into his office one day and asked if I had any questions about the accounts. What did you do? I lied. Said everything looked perfect. Olivia closed her eyes, remembering that moment, the way Hayes had looked at her across his massive desk. He smiled, but his eyes were cold. He said he was glad to hear it. Said he valued loyalty above all else. Then he told me about a new employee he had hired the month before, a young man named Peter Chen. Said Peter had made some mistakes, been asking questions he shouldn't have asked. Said Peter wouldn't be coming back to work. He killed him. Peter's body was found in the river 3 days later. The law ruled it an accident. Olivia opened her eyes and looked at Owen. That's when I knew I had to run. I went home that night, packed what I could carry, and left. I've been moving ever since. Took work where I could find it, nothing that required references. I thought California would be far enough west. I thought he would give up. Men like Hayes don't give up, Owen said grimly. Especially not when someone knows their secrets. I know that now. Olivia's hands wouldn't stop shaking. She looked down at them, at the dirt under her fingernails, at the calluses forming from 3 months of hard work, so different from keeping books. I should have gone to someone. The federal marshal maybe, someone outside Hayes' reach. But I was scared. I'm still scared. Owen stood and paced a few steps, thinking. The sun was getting lower, painting the canyon walls in shades of gold and orange. You said you have evidence. You still have it. Olivia hesitated, then reached into the hidden pocket she had sewn into her skirt. She pulled out a small leather journal, worn from months of being carried everywhere. I copied the relevant pages. It's all here. Dates, amounts, names, everything. Owen took the journal carefully, like it was made of glass. He flipped through the pages, his expression growing harder with each one. This is damning, he said finally. If this got to the right people, Hayes would hang, if it got to the right people. But everyone I can think of is either dead, bought, or too far away to reach before Hayes finds me again. Olivia felt the hopelessness washing over her again. I can't outrun him forever. No, Owen agreed. He handed the journal back to her. But maybe you don't have to. What do you mean? There's a federal marshal that comes through Columbia, about 15 miles from here. His name is Henry Thorne. I met him last year when there was trouble with claim jumpers. He's honest from what I could tell, not the type to look the other way. Hope flickered in Olivia's chest, small and fragile. Do you think he would help if he saw that evidence? Yeah, I think he would. But we'd need to get you to him alive, and we'd need to make sure Hayes can't get to you before the law can move. Owen looked at the darkening sky. We should camp here tonight. Head for Columbia in the morning. Olivia nodded, though the thought of staying in one place made her nervous. She had been moving constantly for so long that stillness felt dangerous. But she was exhausted, her body aching from the hard ride and the adrenaline crash. Owen proved to be practical and efficient. He built a small fire in a sheltered spot where the smoke would dissipate against the canyon wall, making it harder to spot from a distance. He had supplies in his saddlebags, enough for a simple meal of beans and hardtack. They ate in silence as the stars came out overhead, bright and numerous in the clear mountain air. Can I ask you something? Olivia said finally, breaking the quiet. Sure. Why did you help me? Back in town. You could have just ridden away. Owen stared into the fire for a long moment. My sister, he said quietly. She died 3 years ago. She was in trouble, needed help, but I was too far away to get to her in time. I was up in Montana working a ranch. By the time I got word and made it back to California, she was already gone. I'm sorry, Olivia said, meaning it. She got mixed up with a man who hurt her. When she tried to leave, he killed her, made it look like she fell down the stairs. Owen's jaw tightened. The law didn't care. She was just a woman who had made bad choices as far as they were concerned. No one helped her when she needed it. So you helped me. I saw you standing there with that gun, shaking like a leaf, and I saw Emma, saw what she must have looked like at the end, scared and alone. Owen looked at Olivia across the fire. I couldn't help Emma, but I could help you. Olivia felt tears threatening again and swallowed them down. Thank you, she whispered, for Emma, and for me. They sat in companionable silence for a while longer. Olivia found herself studying Owen in the firelight, noting the way his hands moved with easy competence as he tended the flames, the way he periodically checked the surrounding darkness without seeming anxious. There was a steadiness to him that she hadn't encountered in a long time. Most of the men she had met over the past 3 months had either ignored her or looked at her like she was prey. Owen looked at her like she was a person worth protecting. "Where were you headed?" she asked. "Before all this happened, I mean. You were in town for a reason." "Supplies," Owen said. "I have a small ranch about 10 miles north of Murphy's. Nothing fancy, just enough cattle to keep me fed and a little land for horses. I was planning to head back this afternoon, maybe stop at the saloon for a drink first." He smiled slightly. "Then I heard gunshots and figured my drink could wait." "Do you work the ranch alone?" "Yeah, had a hired hand for a while, but he moved on last spring. It's just me now." Owen shrugged. "I prefer it that way mostly. Don't have to answer to anyone. Don't you get lonely?" The question came out before Olivia could stop it. Too personal, too revealing of her own feelings. She had been alone for 3 months, truly alone in a way she had never experienced before, and the loneliness had been almost as hard as the fear. Owen considered the question seriously. "Sometimes," he admitted. "But lonely is better than dead, which is what I'd be if I'd stayed in Montana." "Why? What happened there?" "Let's just say I had my own reasons for moving on. Nothing like your situation, but enough that California seemed like a good idea." Owen stood and added another piece of wood to the fire. "You should try to sleep. We'll need to move at first light." Olivia nodded, though she doubted sleep would come. Owen gave her his bedroll and a blanket, insisting he would keep watch. She lay down near the fire, her body heavy with exhaustion but her mind racing. Every sound in the darkness made her tense, ready to run. But Owen sat calmly by the fire, his rifle across his lap, and gradually his presence became reassuring rather than strange. She must have dozed off eventually because she woke to find the sky lightening in the east and Owen crouched by the fire, heating coffee in a battered tin pot. The smell made her stomach growl. "Morning," he said when he saw her stirring. "Coffee's almost ready." Olivia sat up, her body stiff from sleeping on the ground. She hadn't done that since she was a child playing in the barn. "Did you sleep at all?" "Enough." Owen poured coffee into 2 cups and handed her one. "We should eat and get moving. Columbia is about 3 hours from here if we take the back trails." They broke camp quickly, eliminating all traces of their presence. Owen was meticulous about it, scattering the ashes and covering the fire pit. As they prepared to leave, Olivia found herself watching him, noticing details she had been too frightened to see yesterday. The way he moved with quiet confidence, the gentleness in his hands when he checked his horse's legs and hooves before mounting. The way he had given her the last of the bacon for breakfast, claiming he wasn't hungry. They rode through the morning, sometimes with Olivia behind Owen on his horse, sometimes with her walking to give the animal a rest. The terrain was beautiful, rolling hills thick with pine and oak, granite outcroppings rising like monuments to ancient times. Under different circumstances, Olivia would have loved it. As it was, she could barely appreciate the scenery. Every sound made her jump, every distant movement her heart race. Owen noticed. "We're not being followed," he said as they paused near a stream to water the horse. "I've been checking. No dust, no riders." "They'll come," Olivia said with certainty. "Hayes doesn't give up, maybe not. But by the time they figure out where we went, we'll be in Columbia with the marshal." Owen helped her back onto the horse. "Try to have a little faith." Faith. Olivia hadn't had much of that lately. 3 months of running had worn it down to nothing. But something about Owen made her want to try. He seemed so sure, so solid, like he could stand against anything. They reached Columbia in the early afternoon. The town was busier than Murphy's, still riding some of the prosperity from the gold mining days. The main street was wide and lined with brick buildings, and people moved about with purpose. Owen guided his horse to a building with a sign that read, "Marshal's Office." Inside, they found a deputy rather than the marshal himself. The young man, barely 20, looked up from his desk with a bored expression that sharpened when he saw Olivia's appearance, dusty and disheveled from the ride. "Help you folks?" he asked. "We need to see Marshal Thorne," Owen said. "It's important. Marshal's out on patrol. Won't be back until tomorrow, maybe the day after." The deputy leaned back in his chair. "I can help you with most things." Owen glanced at Olivia, a question in his eyes. She shook her head slightly. She didn't want to trust this information to a deputy who might be on Hayes' payroll or might simply be too inexperienced to understand the danger. "We'll wait for the marshal," Owen said. "Is there a hotel in town you'd recommend?" "Columbia House is decent. 2 blocks down on the right." The deputy's eyes lingered on Olivia with curiosity. "You folks in some kind of trouble?" "No trouble," Owen said easily. "Just need to discuss a business matter with the marshal." They left before the deputy could ask more questions. Owen found the hotel and got them 2 rooms, side by side on the 2nd floor. The proprietor, a plump woman with kind eyes, showed them upstairs and promised hot water for washing. Once they were alone in the hallway, Owen turned to Olivia. "You should rest. I'll keep watch and make sure no one comes asking questions." "Owen." Olivia touched his arm, the first time she had initiated physical contact. "Thank you for everything." He looked down at her hand on his arm, then at her face. Something passed between them in that moment, a connection Olivia hadn't expected. "You don't have to keep thanking me," he said softly. "I'm not going anywhere." The promise in those words made Olivia's chest tighten. She went into her room and shut the door, leaning against it as her legs finally gave out. She slid down to sit on the floor, her whole body shaking again, not from fear this time but from something else. Relief maybe, or the beginning of hope. She stayed in her room for the rest of the afternoon, washing with the hot water the hotel provided, trying to make herself presentable. Her brown dress was stained and torn at the hem, but it would have to do. She had left Sacramento with only 2 dresses and had been wearing them in rotation ever since. When she looked in the mirror above the washstand, she barely recognized herself. The woman staring back had hollow eyes and sharp cheekbones, her brown hair lank and lifeless. 3 months of poor eating and constant stress had worn her down to nothing. A knock at her door made her jump. "It's me," Owen's voice came through the wood. Olivia opened the door to find him standing there with a package wrapped in brown paper. "I thought you might need this," he said, handing it to her. Inside was a new dress, simple but clean, in a soft blue fabric. There was also a shawl, stockings, and a hairbrush. Olivia looked up at Owen, stunned. "You didn't have to do this." "I know." He shifted his weight, suddenly awkward. "But I figured if we're going to meet with the marshal, you should have something decent to wear. Not that there's anything wrong with what you have," he added quickly. "I just thought it's perfect," Olivia interrupted, her throat tight. "Thank you." Owen nodded, his ears going slightly red. "I'll let you rest." I got us a table for dinner downstairs at 6 if you're hungry." After he left, Olivia held the dress against her chest and let herself cry properly for the first time in weeks. Not from fear or despair, but from the simple kindness of a man who barely knew her buying her a dress because he thought she deserved something nice. It broke something open inside her, some wall she had built to keep functioning. She dressed carefully in the new clothes, brushing out her hair until it shone. When she looked in the mirror again, she saw a glimpse of who she used to be, the girl who had laughed easily and believed the world was basically good. That girl felt like a stranger now, but maybe she didn't have to be lost forever. Owen was waiting in the hotel dining room when she came down. He stood when he saw her, his eyes widening slightly. "You look nice," he said, and the simple honesty of it made Olivia blush. "So do you." Owen had cleaned up too, changed into a fresh shirt. His hair was damp like he had dunked his head in the water basin, and he had shaved. Olivia realized with a start that he was actually quite handsome when he wasn't covered in trail dust. They ate dinner together, a simple meal of roast chicken and potatoes that tasted like the finest restaurant food to Olivia. They talked about small things, nothing heavy. Owen told her about his ranch, the 3 horses he was training, the garden he couldn't quite get to grow properly. Olivia found herself telling him about her childhood in San Francisco, her father's watch repair shop, her mother's flower garden. Normal things from a time before her life had fallen apart. "What will you do?" Owen asked as they finished their meal. "After the marshal arrests Hayes, I mean. Will you go back to San Francisco?" Olivia hadn't let herself think that far ahead. "I don't know," she admitted. "My mother died while I was in Sacramento. There's nothing left for me in San Francisco." "What about Sacramento? You could probably find work there once Hayes is gone." "I don't think I could go back there. Too many memories." Olivia looked down at her plate. "I'll figure something out. I'm good with numbers. Someone will need a bookkeeper." Owen was quiet for a moment. "You could stay," he said finally. "In this area, I mean. Columbia always needs people with skills, or Murphy's once things settle down. Near your ranch, you mean?" "Yeah." Owen met her eyes. "Near my ranch." The conversation hung between them, loaded with possibilities neither was quite ready to name. They were interrupted by the hotel proprietor coming to clear their plates, and the moment passed. That night, Olivia lay in her hotel bed listening to the sounds of the town outside her window. For the first time in 3 months, she felt almost safe. Owen was in the next room. The marshal would be back soon. Maybe, just maybe, this nightmare was almost over. She woke to shouting in the street and the sound of breaking glass. Olivia bolted upright, her heart hammering. Gunshots cracked in the night, close and sharp. She grabbed her dress and was pulling it on when Owen burst through her door, his gun drawn. "We need to go," he said urgently. "Hayes' men are here. How did they find us? Doesn't matter. Come on." Owen grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the door. They made it into the hallway just as footsteps thundered up the stairs at the far end. Owen pulled her in the opposite direction, toward a window that overlooked the back alley. "Can you climb?" he asked. Olivia looked at the sheer drop and the narrow ledge. "Do I have a choice?" "Not really." Owen went first, lowering himself out the window and finding footholds in the wooden siding. Olivia followed, her hands shaking so badly she could barely grip the windowsill. Owen guided her feet to the ledge, his voice calm and steady even as more gunshots rang out from inside the hotel. They made it to the ground and ran through the dark alleys of Columbia. Behind them, Olivia could hear men shouting, searching. Owen led her through a maze of back streets until they reached a stable where his horse was kept. He saddled her quickly, his movements economical despite the urgency. "The journal," Owen said as he worked. "Do you still have it?" Olivia's hand went to her pocket and found it empty. Cold fear washed over her. I left it in the room. It was in my other dress. Owen swore, something he hadn't done in her presence before. We can't go back for it. We have to. It's the only evidence. Olivia grabbed his arm. Without it, the marshal has no reason to believe me. It's my word against Hayes, and he's a powerful man. And you'll be a dead woman if we go back. Then I'll be a dead woman who accomplished nothing. Olivia was surprised by the steel in her own voice. I've been running for 3 months, Owen. I'm tired of running. That journal is the only chance I have to stop Hayes, to make sure he doesn't kill anyone else the way he killed Peter Chen and those others. Owen looked at her for a long moment, conflict clear on his face. Then he nodded once, sharp and decisive. All right, but we do this smart. You stay here with the horse. If I'm not back in 10 minutes, you ride for the marshal's office and you don't stop. Owen, I'm serious, Olivia. If something happens to me, you don't come back. You save yourself. He gripped her shoulders, his eyes intense. Promise me. I promise, she whispered, though she wasn't sure she could keep that promise. Owen disappeared into the darkness. Olivia stood in the shadows of the stable, holding the horse's reins with white-knuckled hands, counting seconds that felt like hours. She made it to 300 before she heard the gunshots, 2 quick reports followed by shouting. Her whole body tensed, ready to run toward the sound despite her promise. Then Owen was there, materializing out of the darkness with the journal clutched in one hand and blood on his shoulder. Got it, he said, breathing hard. Let's go. You're hurt. I'll live. Move. Owen pulled himself into the saddle with a grimace, then hauled Olivia up behind him. They rode out of Columbia at a gallop, and this time there was no question they were being pursued. Olivia looked back to see torches and riders emerging from the town, at least 6 of them. Owen pushed his horse hard, but the animal was tired from yesterday's ride and now carried 2 people. The pursuers began to close the distance. Bullets whined past them in the darkness. Owen guided them off the main trail onto rougher ground, using every trick he knew to slow their pursuers, but it wasn't enough. Listen to me, Owen said urgently as they rode. There's a mine shaft about a mile ahead, an old gold mine. The entrance is hidden behind a rockfall, but there's a way through if you know where to look. We're going to hide there and wait them out. What if they find us? They won't. Trust me. Olivia did trust him, she realized. Completely and without reservation. This man she had known for less than 2 days. She wrapped her arms tighter around his waist, feeling the warmth of his blood soaking through his shirt. They reached the mine as the moon rose, casting everything in silver light. Owen dismounted and led them through a gap in the tumbled rocks that Olivia never would have seen on her own. Inside, the mine shaft opened into a larger chamber, cool and dark. Owen moved confidently despite the darkness, leading his horse deeper into the tunnel until they reached a spot where the shaft branched. We wait here, he said, his voice echoing strangely. They'll search for a while, but they won't find the entrance if they don't know where to look. By morning, they'll assume we kept moving. Olivia helped Owen lower himself to the ground, her hands finding his wounded shoulder in the darkness. Let me see, she said. It's not bad. Bullet grazed me. Let me see anyway. Olivia's tone left no room for argument. Owen sighed and held still while she carefully peeled back the torn fabric of his shirt. She couldn't see much in the near total darkness, but her fingers found torn flesh and warm blood. This needs to be cleaned and bandaged. We don't exactly have supplies. I have petticoats. Olivia hiked up her skirt and tore strips from her undergarments, grateful for the darkness that hid her blush. She used water from Owen's canteen to clean the wound as best she could, then bound it tightly. Owen bore the pain in silence, though she felt the tension in his muscles. When she finished, They sat in the darkness listening to the sounds of horses and men searching outside. The voices came close, terrifyingly close, but never found the hidden entrance. Gradually, the sounds faded as the searchers moved on. "How did you know about this place?" Olivia asked softly. "I worked these mines when I first came to California, before I had the ranch." Owen's voice was quiet in the darkness. "Spent a year underground digging for gold that was mostly gone. It was hard, dangerous work." "Is that where you learned to shoot?" "No, I learned that in Montana." Owen shifted and Olivia heard pain in the movement. "My father was a rancher. He taught me young, said a man who couldn't defend himself wasn't much of a man." "I don't think that's true," Olivia said. "Plenty of men can't shoot and they're fine people." "Maybe." Owen was quiet for a moment. "My father wasn't a fine person for what it's worth. He was hard, mean when he drank, which was often. Emma, my sister, she got the worst of it. I should have protected her better." Olivia reached out in the darkness and found his hand, lacing her fingers through his. "You were just a boy." "I was old enough to know better, old enough to take her away from there." Owen's hand tightened on hers. "After she died, I swore I'd never stand by again when someone needed help. That's why I stepped in yesterday, and I'm glad I did. Even though you got shot, even though I got shot." She could hear the smile in his voice. "You're worth a bullet graze, Olivia Morrison." Something warm bloomed in Olivia's chest, something that had nothing to do with the fear or the adrenaline. She was sitting in a dark mine shaft, being hunted by dangerous men, with a man she had known for barely a day. And somehow she felt more connected to another human being than she had in years. They sat in comfortable silence, hands linked in the darkness, until exhaustion finally dragged Olivia under. She woke to dim light filtering through the mine entrance and the warmth of Owen's shoulder beneath her cheek. She had fallen asleep against him and he had let her, his arm wrapped around her to keep her steady. Olivia sat up quickly, embarrassed. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. It's fine." Owen's voice was rough with his own sleep. "You needed rest." In the growing light, Olivia could see his face clearly for the first time since they had fled Colombia. He looked tired, lines of pain around his eyes, but he was smiling slightly. "How's your shoulder?" she asked. "Hurts like blazes," he admitted. "But I'll live. How are you?" "Scared. Tired. Grateful you're insane enough to have gone back for the journal." Olivia pulled the leather-bound book from her pocket, relieved to find it still there. "This thing has caused me nothing but trouble." "It's also going to save your life," Owen pointed out. "Once we get it to Marshal Thorne." "If we get it to him. Hayes clearly has men watching Columbia now. We can't go back there." "No," Owen agreed. "But there are other federal marshals. There's one in Sonora and another in Jackson. We just need to reach one of them." "How?" "Every town between here and there is somewhere Hayes' men could be waiting." Owen thought for a moment, his fingers drumming against his knee. "We go to ground, properly. I take you to my ranch and we lay low for a few days. Let Hayes' men think we've left the area entirely. Then we send a message to Marshal Thorne, have him come to us on neutral ground." "Your ranch isn't exactly neutral ground. If they find us there, they won't. I built my place specifically to be defensible. Small canyon, only one way in, and I can see anyone coming from a mile off." Owen met her eyes. "I won't let anything happen to you, Olivia, I promise." There was that promise again, the one that made her chest tight. Olivia found herself nodding. "All right. We go to your ranch." They waited until mid-morning before venturing out of the mine, making sure the area was clear. Owen's horse had remained remarkably patient, grazing on the sparse grass near the entrance. They mounted and headed north, avoiding main trails and towns. The ride took most of the day, Owen moving slowly to avoid aggravating his wound. The ranch, when they finally reached it in the late afternoon, was exactly as Owen had described. a small valley with a creek running through it, surrounded by forested hills. The house was modest, built of rough-cut lumber with a stone chimney. There was a barn, a corral, and several outbuildings in various states of repair. A few cattle grazed in a meadow and horses lifted their heads to watch as they approached. "It's not much," Owen said, "but it's mine and it's safe." To Olivia, it looked like paradise. Solid walls, a roof protection. She slid off the horse and nearly collapsed, her legs barely holding her. Owen caught her with his good arm. "Easy, you're exhausted." "So are you." "Yeah, but I'm used to it." Owen guided her toward the house. "Come on, let's get you inside." The interior was simple but clean. One main room with a fireplace, a kitchen area, a table and chairs. A doorway led to what Olivia assumed was a bedroom. Everything had the spare, organized look of a place maintained by someone who lived alone. Owen settled Olivia into a chair by the fireplace, then went to start a fire. "I've got food stores," he said. "Not much, but enough. I'll make us something hot." "Owen, you're wounded. Let me help. You can barely stand. Neither can you." They looked at each other and both started laughing, the kind of slightly hysterical laughter that comes from too much stress and too little sleep. It felt good, a release of pressure. When they finally stopped, Olivia felt lighter than she had in months. They made dinner together, a simple stew from dried meat and vegetables. Owen had a bottle of whiskey tucked away, and they each had a small glass with their meal. The alcohol burned going down and settled warmly in Olivia's stomach, easing some of the tension from her shoulders. After dinner, Olivia insisted on checking Owen's wound again. She made him sit by the fire while she carefully unwound the makeshift bandage. The wound looked angry and red, but not infected. She cleaned it again with water and whiskey, ignoring Owen's sharp intake of breath, then bandaged it with strips torn from an old sheet she found in his bedroom. "You're good at this," Owen said, watching her work. "My mother was often sick in the last years of her life. I learned to care for wounds and illness." Olivia tied off the bandage. "This should heal cleanly if you don't do anything stupid. Define stupid." "Getting shot again would qualify," Owen laughed. "I'll do my best to avoid it." As the evening wore on, they talked more, sharing pieces of their lives with an ease that surprised Olivia. Owen told her about Montana, about his father's ranch and the reasons he had left. Not all of it. She sensed he was holding parts back, but enough that she understood he had his own demons. She told him about Sacramento, about Hayes and the fear that had consumed her life, about the guilt she felt for running instead of fighting. "You were smart to run," Owen said firmly. "Fighting Hayes head-on would have gotten you killed. This way you survived long enough to find help." "I found you," Olivia said softly. "Yeah." Owen's eyes were warm in the firelight. "You did." The moment stretched between them, charged with something neither quite knew how to name. Olivia felt her heart beating faster, felt the pull toward this man who had risked everything for a stranger. She wanted to lean closer, wanted to feel his arms around her, wanted something she hadn't let herself want in so long, but Owen stood, breaking the moment. "You should take the bed," he said. "I'll sleep out here by the fire." "Owen, I can't take your bed. You're injured." "Which is why I'll be more comfortable out here where I can keep watch." His tone left no room for argument. "Get some rest, Olivia. We both need it." Olivia wanted to argue, but exhaustion was pulling at her like a tide. She nodded and went into the small bedroom, closing the door behind her. The bed was narrow but comfortable, covered with a quilt that looked homemade. She lay down fully clothed and was asleep within minutes, the first truly deep sleep she had had in months. She woke to bright sunlight streaming through the window and the smell of coffee. For a moment she couldn't remember where she was, then it all came flooding back. Hayes, the journal. Owen. She sat up quickly and went to the door. Owen was at the stove, cooking eggs in a pan. He looked better this morning, some color back in his face. He smiled when he saw her. "Morning. Hope you're hungry." "Starving," Olivia realized. They ate together, then Owen showed her around the ranch properly. He introduced her to his horses, 3 beautiful animals in various stages of training. The cattle were few, only about 20 head, but healthy-looking. Owen explained his plans to expand the herd, his face animated in a way she hadn't seen before. "This is your dream," Olivia said, watching him. "Yeah." Owen looked around at his small kingdom. "It's not much yet, but it's mine. No one telling me what to do or how to do it. Just me and the land and the animals. It's a good life." "It sounds wonderful." They spent the day doing ranch work. Owen teaching Olivia how to care for the horses, how to check the cattle for signs of illness, how to mend fencing. The physical work felt good after months of running and hiding. Olivia found herself relaxing, laughing at Owen's dry commentary, feeling almost normal. That evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sun set over the hills, Owen said, "I sent word to Marshal Thorne this morning. My neighbor, old Sam Carter, he's heading to Sonora. He'll get a message to the marshal, have him come here to meet us." "How long will that take?" "A few days, maybe a week. We just have to stay put and stay safe until then." Owen glanced at her. "Think you can manage that?" "I'll try." Olivia pulled her shawl tighter against the cooling air. "It feels strange, staying in one place. Like I should be moving." "You're safe here, Olivia. I won't let Hayes get to you." She believed him. More than that, she was beginning to realize that what she felt for Owen went beyond gratitude or relief. Somewhere in the past few days, between the fear and the running and the quiet moments of connection, she had started falling for him. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. The days settled into a rhythm. Owen taught Olivia to shoot, something she had never wanted to learn but now recognized as necessary. She proved to be a decent shot, steady once she got over her fear of the gun. They worked the ranch together, and Olivia found satisfaction in the simple, honest labor. She cooked meals from Owen's stores, surprised at how much she enjoyed the domestic tasks she had once found boring. In the evenings, they talked about everything and nothing. Owen told her about his dreams for the ranch, his plans to eventually expand into horse breeding. Olivia talked about her love of numbers, how accounting had always made sense to her in a way the rest of the world sometimes didn't. They discovered shared tastes in books, though Owen's collection was small. They argued good-naturedly about whether beef or pork made better stew. And through it all, the attraction between them grew, undeniable and electric. Olivia caught herself watching Owen when he worked, admiring the strength in his shoulders, the careful gentleness of his hands with the animals. She saw him watching her too, his eyes following her movements with an intensity that made her breath catch. But neither of them acted on it. The situation was still too precarious, too dangerous. Hayes was still out there, still hunting. Until that was resolved, they both seemed to silently agree nothing else could happen. On the 5th evening, as they sat by the fire after dinner, Olivia finally voiced the question that had been bothering her. "What happens after?" she asked. "After the marshal arrests Hayes and I testify." "What happens to me?" Owen looked at her for a long moment. "What do you want to happen?" "I don't know." Olivia stared into the fire. "I've spent so long running that I haven't thought about what comes next. I suppose I'll need to find work somewhere, rebuild my life. Maybe go back to keeping books, though the thought makes me tired. You could stay here." The words hung in the air between them. Olivia looked at Owen, her heart suddenly racing. "What? Stay here, on the ranch?" Owen's voice was careful, controlled. "I could use the help, and you've proven you're good at the work. I could pay you a salary, nothing much but fair. You'd have a place to live, work that's honest. You'd be safe. As an employee. Yes. Owen's jaw tightened. As an employee. Olivia felt something crack inside her chest. Of course that's what he meant. What else could he mean? They barely knew each other, had been thrown together by circumstance. The connection she felt was probably one-sided, born of gratitude and fear and proximity. Owen was offering her kindness, nothing more. "I'll think about it," she said quietly. "Thank you." The evening felt strained after that, both of them too polite, too careful. Olivia excused herself early, claiming tiredness. In Owen's bedroom, which she still felt guilty for occupying, she lay awake staring at the ceiling and trying not to cry. She had been foolish to hope for more. Owen was a good man helping someone in need, just like he had wished he could have helped his sister. That's all this was. The warmth she felt when he smiled at her, the way her heart jumped when he touched her hand, the dreams she had been having about a future here with him. It was all one-sided fantasy. She must have eventually slept because she woke to darkness and the sound of horses. Multiple horses, moving fast. Olivia bolted upright, her heart hammering. The bedroom door opened and Owen was there, fully dressed, gun in hand. "They're here," he said grimly. "Hayes' men found us." Olivia's blood ran cold. "How many?" "At least 6, maybe more. They're surrounding the house." Owen's face was hard in the darkness. "I need you to listen carefully. There's a root cellar under the kitchen, hidden under the rug by the stove. You're going to hide there with the journal. No matter what happens, you don't come out until I tell you it's safe." "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to talk to them, try to buy time until help arrives." "What help? The marshal won't be here for days." "Sam Carter knows I'm in trouble. He'll bring help." Owen gripped her shoulders. "Olivia, you have to trust me. Hide in the cellar and stay quiet." "If something happens to me, don't say that." "If something happens to me," Owen continued firmly, "you wait until they leave, then you run. Take my best horse and ride for Sonora. Find Marshal Thorne yourself, but you don't let Hayes win. You understand?" Olivia nodded, tears streaming down her face. Owen wiped them away with his thumbs, his touch infinitely gentle. "I'm not planning on dying today," he said. "But if it comes to that, I'm glad I met you, Olivia Morrison. These past few days, they've been the best I've had in a long time." "Owen," he kissed her then, quick and hard, a kiss that tasted of desperation and unspoken feelings. Then he was pushing her toward the kitchen, helping her down into the dark root cellar, handing her a lantern and the journal. "Stay quiet," he whispered, "no matter what you hear." Then he was gone, dropping the trapdoor and covering it with the rug. Olivia crouched in the darkness, the lantern providing a small circle of light, and tried not to shake apart. She heard Owen's voice outside, calm and strong. "That's far enough. State your business." A voice she didn't recognize answered. "We're here for the woman. Give her to us and we'll leave peaceful like." "No woman here but me," Owen said. "You boys must have the wrong ranch." "Don't play games, Fletcher. We tracked you here. We know she's inside." "Then you tracked wrong." Owen's voice hardened. "And you're trespassing. I suggest you leave before someone gets hurt. Mr. Hayes just wants to talk to the lady. No harm intended. Clayton Hayes murders people who get in his way. I'm not handing anyone over to him." There was a moment of tense silence. Then the voice said, "Have it your way. Boys, search the house." Gunfire exploded overhead. Olivia clapped her hands over her mouth to keep from screaming. She heard boots thundering across the floor, furniture being overturned, wood splintering. More gunshots, close and terrifyingly loud. She curled into a ball in the corner of the cellar, shaking so hard her teeth chattered. The fighting seemed to go on forever. Olivia lost track of time, lost in terror and the darkness. She heard men shouting, heard what might have been someone falling, heard the crack of breaking glass. Through it all, she heard Owen's gun firing, steady and controlled. Then, suddenly, different sounds. More horses, more voices. These ones shouting orders in the clipped tones of authority. The gunfire stopped. Olivia heard heavy footsteps overhead, heard a voice she didn't know saying, "Secure the area. Check for wounded." She didn't move. Owen had said to wait for him, and she would wait. Time passed. How much, she couldn't say. Then the trapdoor lifted and light flooded down. Olivia looked up, ready to run, and saw Owen's face. He was bleeding from a cut over his eye and his shirt was torn, but he was alive. "It's safe," he said, reaching down to help her up. The marshal came. Olivia scrambled up into the kitchen, which was a disaster. Furniture overturned, windows broken, bullet holes in the walls. 3 men lay on the floor, not moving. Outside, she could see more men, some on the ground, others with their hands bound. A tall man with a thick mustache and a marshal's star approached them. "Owen Fletcher?" he asked. "That's me." "I'm Marshal Thorne. Sam Carter came to me 2 days ago, said you might be in trouble, gathered some deputies and came as fast as we could." The marshal looked at Olivia. "And you must be the woman Clayton Hayes is so eager to find." "Olivia Morrison," she managed. "And yes. Sam said you have evidence of Hayes' criminal activities." Olivia pulled out the journal with shaking hands. "It's all here. Payments for murder, bribery, extortion. Everything." Marshal Thorne took the journal and flipped through it, his expression growing grimmer with each page. "This is substantial," he said finally. "If this holds up, Hayes will hang." "It will hold up," Olivia said. "I kept those books myself. I can testify to every entry." "Then we have him." The marshal looked at Owen. "You did good, Fletcher, keeping her safe." "Just doing what needed doing," Owen said. The marshal organized his men to transport the prisoners and the bodies. He promised to send someone to help Owen repair his house. As the chaos began to settle, Olivia found herself standing in the middle of the destroyed kitchen, suddenly exhausted beyond measure. Owen came to her, wrapping his arms around her. Olivia collapsed against his chest, finally letting herself cry. "It's over," Owen murmured into her hair. "It's really over. 3 men are dead. Bad men who chose their path. You didn't make them work for Hayes. You didn't make them come here." Owen pulled back to look at her face. "You survived, Olivia. That's what matters." She looked up at him, this man who had saved her life multiple times, who had stood between her and death without hesitation. "You could have died," she whispered. "For me." "Why?" Owen cupped her face in his hands, his calloused thumbs wiping away her tears. "Because from the moment I saw you standing in that street, shaking but defiant, I knew you were special. Because these past few days with you have been the happiest I can remember. Because somewhere between Murphy's and here, I fell in love with you." Olivia's breath caught. "You love me." "Yeah." Owen smiled, that warm smile that made her heart skip. "I know it's fast. I know we barely know each other, but yeah, I love you, Olivia Morrison." The tears came harder, but these were different. These were relief and joy and overwhelmed emotion. "I love you too," she said. "I was so scared you only saw me as someone to protect, as someone like your sister. But I love you, Owen Fletcher. I think I have since you bought me that dress." Owen laughed and kissed her properly this time, not desperate but tender, full of promise. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. "Stay," he said. "Not as an employee, stay as my partner. Help me build this ranch into something real, build a life with me." "Yes," Olivia said without hesitation. "Yes to all of it." The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. Marshal Thorne took Olivia's journal and her testimony and built a case against Clayton Hayes that couldn't be denied. Other victims came forward once word spread that someone had finally stood up to him. Hayes was arrested in Sacramento and brought to trial. Olivia had to testify, which meant traveling back to the city she had fled from, but this time Owen went with her. This time she wasn't alone. The trial lasted 2 weeks. Hayes' lawyers tried every trick they could think of, but the evidence was overwhelming. The journal entries matched perfectly with dates of deaths and disappearances. Other bookkeepers who had worked for Hayes testified to seeing similar discrepancies. Peter Chen's family testified. The families of the murdered businessman and his wife testified. In the end, the jury took less than an hour to find Clayton Hayes guilty of multiple counts of murder and conspiracy. He was sentenced to hang. Olivia watched the verdict with a strange mix of emotions. Relief, certainly. Satisfaction that justice had been served, but also sadness for all the lives Hayes had destroyed, including his own. Owen held her hand through it all, a steady presence by her side. When it was finally over, they returned to the ranch. Owen's neighbors had helped repair the damage from the gunfight, and the house looked almost as good as new. Better, actually, because Owen had taken the opportunity to make some improvements. The bedroom was slightly larger now, with a window that looked out over the valley. He had added a second room too, though he wouldn't tell Olivia what he planned to use it for. They were married in late October, 6 months after that fateful morning in Murphy's. The ceremony was simple, held in the small church in Columbia with Marshall Thorne and some of Owen's neighbors as witnesses. Olivia wore a dress of soft cream fabric that Owen had insisted on buying her, along with a hat trimmed with blue ribbon. Owen wore his best suit, nervous and handsome, stumbling slightly over his vows in a way that made Olivia's heart overflow. Afterward, there was a small celebration at the ranch. Sam Carter, the old neighbor who had brought the marshal, played fiddle. People danced in the yard as the sun set. Olivia danced with Owen, feeling lighter than air, like she could float away if he wasn't holding her. "Happy?" Owen asked, spinning her slowly. "So happy I can barely believe it's real," Olivia said. 6 months ago I was running for my life. Now I'm married to the best man I've ever known. 6 months ago I was alone on a ranch wondering if this was all my life would ever be, Owen said. Now I have you. Seems like a fair trade. Just fair, Olivia teased. The best trade in the history of trades, Owen amended, grinning. How's that? Better. They settled into married life with surprising ease. Olivia took over the ranch's accounts, organizing Owen's finances with the skill of a trained bookkeeper. She also helped with the horses, discovering a natural affinity for the animals. Owen taught her to ride properly, patiently correcting her form until she could gallop across the valley without fear. Together, they expanded the ranch. They bought more cattle, breeding stock that would improve the herd. They built a better barn and fixed up the outbuildings. Owen's horse training business grew as word spread about his skill. Olivia started a garden, something she had always wanted to try, and was delighted when vegetables actually grew. The second room Owen had added to the house turned out to be for the baby that arrived the following summer. Olivia had been terrified when she realized she was pregnant, memories of her mother's difficult pregnancies haunting her. But Owen was there through all of it, holding her hand through the morning sickness, rubbing her aching back, reading to her in the evenings when she was too tired to do anything but rest. Their son was born on a warm July morning in 1874, with a midwife from Columbia attending and Owen pacing nervously outside. The birth was hard, but Olivia was strong, and when she finally held her baby boy, everything else faded away. They named him James, after Owen's grandfather who had been kind where his father had been cruel. James Fletcher had his father's dark hair and his mother's eyes, and from the moment he entered the world, he had both his parents wrapped around his tiny fingers. Olivia discovered that she loved being a mother. She had worried she wouldn't, worried she would be as fragile and distant as her own mother had become in her illness. But with James, everything felt natural. She nursed him while keeping the ranch books balanced on her knee. She wore him in a sling while working in the garden. Owen built a cradle that he kept in the barn so she could have the baby near while they worked with the horses. Owen proved to be a wonderful father, patient and gentle. He talked to James constantly, explaining ranch work in a soft voice, singing old songs his sister had taught him. Watching Owen with their son, Olivia fell even more deeply in love with her husband. The years passed in a blur of work and joy. The ranch prospered. Owen's reputation as a horse trainer spread, and people came from as far as Sacramento to buy his animals. Olivia's garden expanded until they had more vegetables than they could eat and began selling the surplus in town. They hired a hand to help with the cattle, a young man named Thomas who reminded Owen of himself at that age and taught him the business. James grew into a bright, energetic boy who loved the ranch and the animals. By the time he was 4, he was following Owen everywhere, trying to help with the horses, asking endless questions. Olivia watched them together and felt her heart could barely contain all the love she felt. In the spring of 1877, their daughter arrived, a tiny red-faced bundle they named Emma after Owen's sister. Owen cried when Olivia told him the name she had chosen, great silent tears that tracked down his weathered cheeks. "She would have loved you," he said, holding his daughter carefully. "She would have loved knowing there's an Emma Fletcher who will grow up safe and happy." Emma was different from her brother, quieter and more thoughtful. She watched everything with solemn eyes and rarely cried. As she grew, she showed an early affinity for growing things, spending hours with Olivia in the garden, carefully patting soil around seedlings with her small hands. They had one more child, another boy born in 1879. They named him Daniel, and he was the wildest of the 3, fearless and laughing, giving his parents constant heart attacks with his climbing and exploring. But he was also affectionate, always ready with hugs and kisses, keeping the household filled with noise and joy. The ranch became a real success. They had over 100 head of cattle now, and Owen's horses were sought after throughout the region. They hired more help, built a second barn, expanded the house to accommodate their growing family. The small, struggling ranch Owen had built alone became a thriving operation, a testament to what 2 people could build when they worked together. But more than the material success, what Olivia treasured was the life they had created. Every evening after the work was done and the children were in bed, she and Owen would sit on the porch they had built together, watching the sun set over the valley. Owen would take her hand, weathered now from years of ranch work but strong, and they would just sit in comfortable silence. Sometimes they talked about the past, about that terrifying time when they had first met. It seemed like a lifetime ago now, those desperate days of running and fear. But Olivia never forgot how lucky she was, how easily things could have gone differently. If Owen hadn't been in Murphy's that morning, if he hadn't stepped in to help, if Marshall Thorne hadn't arrived in time, so many moments where everything could have fallen apart. On a warm evening in the summer of 1882, as they sat on the porch watching their 3 children play in the yard, Olivia turned to Owen. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Taking on my problems that day in Murphy's?" Owen looked at her with surprise. "Regret marrying you and having this life?" "Not for a second. You could have been killed multiple times, but I wasn't, and if I had walked away, I never would have had any of this." Owen gestured to the ranch, to their children. "I would have stayed alone, building a ranch for no particular reason, growing old by myself." Instead, I have you. I have them. I have a reason to build something that will last." Olivia leaned her head on his shoulder. "I was so scared that day," she admitted. "Not just of Hayes' men, but of everything. I thought my life was over, that I would spend whatever time I had left just running and hiding. I never imagined I could have something like this." "You were brave," Owen said. "The bravest person I've ever known. You stood up to a powerful man, you survived, and you never gave up. That's not the action of someone whose life is over. That's the action of someone who fights for what's right." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching James help Daniel climb a tree while Emma picked flowers nearby. Olivia thought about that morning 9 years ago, standing in Murphy's with a gun in her shaking hand, terrified and desperate. She thought about Owen stepping between her and danger without hesitation. She thought about that moment in the mine when he had held her hand in the darkness, and she had felt for the first time in months that she wasn't alone. "I love you," she said quietly, "more than I can ever put into words." Owen kissed the top of her head. "I love you too. Always have from that first moment. Always will, until my last breath." It was a promise he kept. They grew old together on that ranch, watching their children grow and eventually have children of their own. James took over the ranch when Owen's back started giving him trouble, running it with the same care and attention his father had. Emma married a teacher from Columbia and filled her house with both children and flowers. Daniel became a horse trainer like his father, traveling throughout California, but always coming home. Olivia and Owen had 43 years together, years filled with hard work and laughter, with struggles overcome and joys shared. When Owen finally passed in the winter of 1916, peacefully in his sleep, Olivia held his hand and thanked him for saving her life all those years ago. Not just from Hayes' men, but from a life lived in fear. He had shown her what it meant to be truly safe, truly loved, truly home. She lived another 5 years, long enough to see their grandchildren grown and starting families of their own. She spent her final years in the house Owen had built, surrounded by the family they had created together, looking out over the valley they had tamed together. When she finally closed her eyes for the last time, it was with a smile on her face and a heart full of gratitude for the cowboy who had stepped in to help a desperate woman and had given her a life beyond her wildest dreams. The ranch still stands today, passed down through generations of Fletchers. The house has been expanded and modernized, but the original rooms remain, along with the porch where Owen and Olivia used to sit and watch the sunset. Family stories are still told about the great-great-grandparents who founded the ranch, about how they met during a gunfight in a small mining town, about how their love story started with a secret and a promise that changes nothing. Because in the end, that's what Owen had said when Olivia had finally told him everything, shaking in that mine shaft all those years ago. He had listened to her story, to the secrets she carried and the fears that haunted her, and he had simply said, "That changes nothing. I'm still here. I'm not going anywhere." And he hadn't. Through danger and difficulty, through the building of a life and the raising of children, through 43 years of marriage and all the joys and sorrows that came with it, Owen Fletcher had kept his promise. He had stayed by Olivia's side, loving her completely, never once making her feel like her past was something to be ashamed of or afraid of. That was the real story, the one that mattered. Not the gunfights or the villain or the dramatic escape, but the quiet promise of a good man who saw someone in need and chose to help, who saw a woman shaking with fear and decided she was worth protecting, who heard secrets that could have sent him running and instead said the words that would change both their lives forever. That changes nothing. 3 words that meant everything. 3 words that built a legacy lasting generations. 3 words that proved sometimes the greatest love stories start in the most unlikely ways, and that real heroism isn't about grand gestures but about simple, steadfast presence. About showing up. About staying. About loving someone completely, secrets and all, and never letting them face the world alone. That was Owen and Olivia's story, and it was a good one.